Okay, so welcome again and namaste and welcome to Manasa 101. This is the fourth lecture or discussion that we're having. And one of the things that I mentioned last week that we wanted to cover a little bit in depth is the Panchakosha, or 5 levels or layers of awareness. So this is it's a topic that you have probably previously heard something about. Just to check, can everyone hear me okay? Yep, okay, thought so. You have all heard about this, I'm sure, and sometimes you may have heard it with different terms such as 5 sheaths. But basically what we're talking about is, well, sheath is a literal translation of the Sanskrit word kosha. I prefer to use the term layers of awareness or levels of awareness. You can think of the layers of an onion, each one encases the ones before it, or if you peel away the outer layers, you get to what's deeper inside. And this is, we've talked about perspectives. We've talked about the Shaddarshan, or these 6 philosophical systems, which, well, we pretty much end up using just about all of them to try to get a perspective on Ayurveda. We talk about, non-linear thought and how that is so much involved in the way that Ayurveda is understood and presented. And this is a good example of that. So think of it as we're looking at kind of another cross-section of how we function as individuals. So we've looked at the Sankhya perspective and we said, okay, so we start out with ahankar, or our sense of identity with this world, and we being the Atma, or the soul, this little tiny spark of divine energy that gets wrapped with this ahankar. And ahankar in Sattva Gun produces mind, in Raja Gun produces intellect, in Tamo Gun produces the sense objects, and then the 5 primary categories of matter, or Panchamahabhut, and so on, and so on, and so on. So we've gone through this whole analytical breakdown, and we've been in Manasa 101, we've been talking about mind. We've talked about these 3, one of the most important things. We've talked about what are these 3 main occupations of the mind: thinking, feeling, and willing. And now we're looking at the let's lump mind, intellect, ego, body, everything right back into one category called existence, and let's see if we can slice that another way. And this is how we're slicing it up. We're slicing it up into these 5 layers, and these layers are called the 5 levels of awareness, or Panchakosha. So we'll use the Sanskrit names and, the explanation for those. So there's Annamaya. Annamaya is, Anna literally means food, especially food which is grains. So Annamaya is the awareness of gross consumption, especially eating and tasting. Putting things in my mouth, eating them, this is sort of characterizes the level of Annamaya. Pranamaya is the awareness of my own vitality and the need to protect myself and to protect my vitality, to express myself through action of the prana. So prana in this case is referring to vitality. It's referring to life. It's referring to the life force that is flowing through the body. And when we feel that, what is it that we feel when we exercise? What is it that we feel good? Well, you know, in the scientific terms, chemical terms, they say, well, there's a release of endorphins and you get the runner's high, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, there's not enough activity in yoga practice to release endorphins. Why do you feel good when you do yoga? Because your prana is being stimulated, it's being balanced, it's being rectified, it's being tuned, and we feel better because of prana. So pranamaya is this level of awareness of our vitality. Manomaya is the level of awareness of how I feel. And it's more than just how I feel. It's also thinking, our feeling, our willing. If we enjoy an argument, there may be intellect involved, but we are enjoying that. That is also manomaya. That is also, you know, when I say argument, I mean a debate, a discussion. You know, it's always a lot of fun to sit down at a dinner with friends and bring up topics like, you know, politics and religion and just watch the sparks fly. I'm just kidding. But, you know, you get the idea that when we enjoy things that may be abstract or that may be ways of looking at things and expressing our point of view, and sometimes pure imagination. This is manomaya. Vijnanamaya is the awareness of pure intellect. It's about the pursuit of knowledge. It's about having a balanced understanding things as they are. This is called Vijnanamaya. It's the level of intellectual awareness that's not dependent on how we feel. And finally, Anandamaya. It's the awareness of spiritual existence. It's the pursuit of bliss and perfection. Now, nowadays it's fairly popular to characterize any sort of, you know, spiritual thing as it's really just mind. It's all just about mind and intellect. It's all about just mind and feeling, really, because it's usually not considered to be even intellectual, because, you know, depending on the level of philosophy behind it. But according to Ayurveda and according to the ancient writings on Ayurveda, Anandamaya is that level of existence where we are really trying to be in touch with the Atma, and we're looking for the things that directly stimulate the Atma, not just by means of mind and intellect. Although there may also be appeal for mind and intellect, Anandamaya is looking for the things that sort of plug in directly to the Atma, to the spiritual essence of what we are. So it may be, you know, things that we pursue through various spiritual paths or philosophy or whatever. So let's talk about these 5 levels of existence just very briefly. This is not a really long presentation here, but this is something that there's going to be a follow-up assignment, and I would like, we're going to have a follow-up assignment on this, and it is very important to understand these 5 layers. And it will be good if you know the Sanskrit terms as well, but you really want to understand these and be able to, you know, give examples of them. So it's a fairly simple breakdown. So the easy way to remember this is to start from a sort of chronological order. Think when you were a small baby or a toddler. And maybe we don't remember when we're that young, but we've all either had or been around small children. What is it they want to do? What do you do when you toddler-proof a house? You got to keep everything out of reach that they could put in their mouth and could cause harm. Why? Because we start out life naturally. Our level of awareness is pretty much limited to Annamaya. I want to put things in my mouth. I want to have that pacifier in my, why is it a pacifier? Because it's like having mommy's nipple in my mouth. It's pacifying. It makes me feel satisfied and connected because this is my level of awareness right now. It's consumption, it's connection, it's receiving nurturing mother's milk, and it's having things in my mouth. This is my connection to things and to the world. So we continue to function on this level. It's something that stays with us. It's not something that we give up. But when we perform the natural and necessary functions, we need to sustain our bodily existence by eating right. We are functioning on the level of Annamaya. Now, if there's an imbalance or an overindulgence, what can happen? Then we may regress. We might get stuck on a very gross level of existence where we're trying to fulfill some emotional void by eating and drinking. And then really this can be very unhealthy. So this is, you know, if you think about it, so from the perspective of Ayurveda, if there is an eating disorder that is where someone is really trying to fulfill an emotional void through eating, then we'll say that, you know, this is really, it is a problem of being stuck in the stage of Annamaya. So what can we do about that as Ayurvedic practitioners and counselors? Well, think about what happens naturally. Moving on to the next stage takes place naturally during childhood. And what is the next stage is pranamaya. And what is if someone has that type of disorder, you need to move them on to the next stage. It's very hard to jump stages. So for example, if someone is kind of gotten themselves stuck back in this Annamaya level of awareness where everything is about eating and, well, I like to eat this because it makes me feel good, and I know that fried pork rinds are bad for me, but I like the way that it makes me feel when I eat them. Yeah, I know it's a little bit of a gross example, at least for me, but, you know, think of anything that's unhealthy that people might eat as kind of a food addiction, and you can't intellectually reason someone out of that. It's an emotional thing. Their emotions have become invested in their mouths and stomachs. There's a very strong emotional connection between taste and the sensation of the full stomach. So to move someone on to pranamaya, we have to get them moving. We have to get them to go on and move on to the next stage. So someone with a chronic illness may also be stuck in the Annamaya stage. That can also be an external factor. So, you know, for example, if someone is bedridden, you know, suddenly, well, I was a runner. I ran 5 miles a day. Suddenly I was bedridden with an illness. I broke my leg and I was stuck in bed and I didn't have anything to do but eat. And people were bringing me all this stuff because they felt bad for me. And you know, now I'm trying to get out of it. So pranamaya is this next stage. Think of a child again. Okay, now we've gone on to the next stage. Okay, now the kid is 5 years old. What do they want to do? I want to go outside and play. I want to play. I want to play on the swings. I want to go climb on the slides. I want to play with my friends. I'm going to go outside and play. Okay, come inside. It's time to eat. No, I don't want to come inside. I want to come inside to eat and sleep. That's all silly stuff, you know. So we naturally function on this level of pranamaya when we're aware of our health and we want to stay healthy, when we enjoy running, exercise, moving, and other physical activity, when we enjoy doing yoga, we are enjoying the sensation. It's bringing us mental balance, it's bringing us peace, it's helping our intellect to function, and it's also it is also by balancing the mind and facilitating the ability to meditate and connect with the divine. It's also nurturing our Anandamaya Kosh. So I'm not going to say that yoga is something that is really pranamaya, but think about, physical exercise, running, that is definitely pranamaya. Also, our tendency to defend ourselves from bodily harm, that is pranamaya. If someone is obsessed with self-protection, then, there may be an imbalance. They may be stuck on pranamaya, like someone who may be a survivalist. They're absolutely obsessed and paranoid because they cannot really think past the need to defend, to protect the body against harm. So then we come to manomaya. So again, let's think back to the evolutionary stage. We talked about the toddler who wanted to put everything in the mouth and drove the parents crazy because they were, worried about, oh my God, is the kid going to find rat poison or something? We got to childproof the house. And then the child moved to, I want to play outside, I'm not going to come inside for anything. And now suddenly the kid can read and play video games, and that's all that they want to do. They are now discovering manomaya. And this is the level that we do a lot of our functioning on for much of our adult life. It's where our feelings, our emotions, our likes and our dislikes take place. And this is also where our imagination comes from, which also has input from other layers of our existence. If someone indulges in mind-altering substances, alcohol and other drugs, or there's an imbalance or a disease, or there is an imbalance of vata, it may make it harder for someone to separate fact from fantasy. So this is another topic that I'm going to cover today, is the perspective of Jataka Samhita on different types of mental disorders. But so this is the manomaya. So we've gone from annamaya, the level of consumption, awareness of consumption, tasting, consuming, to pranamaya, the awareness of vitality, existing and defending my existence, to the level of manomaya, the realm of the mind, of feelings, of imagination, of emotions. How did this make me feel? And then finally we are now coming to the realm of objective knowledge, objective understanding. So now let's say that the child has now become maybe 18, and it happens with a lot of us when we go off to college and we discover I'm now studying something that is amazing, and now it's not just about getting into college. I'm in college and I'm now studying something in depth, and I'm learning new and amazing things, and I'm becoming passionate about that. So this is sort of that natural stage where we're now expanding into our level of awareness of knowledge of Vijnanamaya. And we're talking about knowledge that's not dependent on how we feel. So it's really about the analytical side of knowledge. And I'm not just talking about analytical in terms of logic and mathematics, but also just in terms of knowledge that is objective, that's not hinging on our own personal view and feelings about things. If we were able to function purely on this level, it would make us a bit cold and dry. But if we were able to do that, then it wouldn't be colored by our likes and dislikes. And if someone was obsessed with knowledge and they didn't have any balance of feeling, compassion, that would basically be what we might call sociopathic behavior. If someone had no morals or scruples and was only interested in knowledge. So really, when we're talking about Vijnanamaya, it's not that kind of sociopathic, imbalanced knowledge at any cost. It's more sort of, knowledge as an ideal, having a passion for understanding things. And then finally, there is Anandamaya. So Anandamaya means spiritual bliss, realization, understanding things that are related to the Atma, not just understanding intellectually, but making a connection of the Atma with the divine. It's what we seek in spiritual paths or in religion or in a yoga sadhana. And you can characterize it in general as the need to feel some connection with the greater whole. And I believe this is a useful way to look at it, because our sense of connection may be one of feeling disconnected or isolated. So, for example, someone may be an atheist, and atheists generally, dislike someone saying that, it's part of human nature to want to experience a connection with the divine. And I just say, well, it's just an individual thing. It's their way of feeling it is that they feel disconnected or isolated, and that's just a way of feeling. It's a way of that someone feels. It's not, it's for them. That's what they feel. So this is the layer of existence, Anandamaya. It's not about beliefs. So if someone has a belief, that may be very much involved in the Manomaya layer of their existence. It's more kind of the thing that people who are, mystics and saints experience. They tap deeply into this layer of existence. So really being on this Anandamaya layer, it's not such a common thing. Okay, so that's it. That's the quick overview of the Panchakosha, or these 5 layers or levels of awareness. And I'm going to put the slideshow up there in Manasa 101, and there will be some assignments, and we want to have you try to think of things from the perspective of these layers. So any questions on that particular topic before we move on here? Okay. All right, so now I want to go over a presentation that I put together for a previous group, and this is talking about disorders of the mind and the role of sleep, in particular from the perspective of Charaka Samhita. Okay, so there are really 3 principles of health according to Ayurveda. 1 is food, what we eat, how we eat it. 2 is sleep, how we sleep. Do we sleep properly? And 3 is not indulging excessively in sex. So this is according to Charaka Samhita. So excessive indulgence in sex is considered to be a cause of unhealth because it depletes the ojas. So, we've talked about the saptadhatu, the 7 substances and their transformation, and the most refined transformation is that of shukradhatu, and shukradhatu is wasted through overindulgence in sex, and so that's why it's considered to be a possible cause of poor health. Oh, and there's a missing image here. So mind and intellect are very strongly connected. They sometimes have dynamic tension between them, and they're primary components of the subtle body. So this is just basically a recap of what we've talked about. What are 5 essential functions of intellect? So let's talk about things that are specific to intellect. So we have ascertainment, understanding what something is. We have discernment, separating what it is from what it isn't. Okay, so these are broken down into 2 separate functions. I want to know what something is, and I want to be able to eliminate what it isn't. And then the acceptance, the process of integrating something that I've learned. Now think about this. This is a very useful characterization of one of the functions of intelligence, because what is it that we do? When we're trying to understand something, what do? We study it, we look at examples, we try to come up with applications of it. Finally, it starts to sink in. That is the process called acceptance. We begin to now integrate it into our own thought processes. Another function of intellect is memory, our ability to remember all of these things that we have understood. And sleep is an essential requirement for intellect. If we don't have enough sleep, intellect is not able to function. Okay, so these are all requirements for the proper functioning of the Sukshma Sharira, or the inner self. So let's talk about sleep. Now, sleep is it's such an important ingredient. It's important for the functioning of the mind. It's important for the functioning of intellect. So, for example, the actual requirement of the body for sleep is not as extensive as the need of the mind and intellect, and this is something that has been documented. The studies that have been done on sleep have shown that the body can be refreshed through a relatively small amount of sleep, but without sufficient sleep, people suffer nervous breakdown, mental disorders, inability to concentrate. There is a long range of things which are just, very well documented that are connected to sleep. So Ayurveda has been saying this, except that it was all written down, a few thousand years before all this was discovered empirically. So the definition of sleep, or nidra, the Sanskrit word is nidra, it is defined when the heart is covered by tamogun. It's a natural process, and it can result from exhaustion with the senses and the sense objects. We can fall asleep when we're tired. And sleep naturally increases kapha dosha. Okay, so here's a very, useful takeaway here. If we sleep more, it will cause an increase of kapha dosha. It can cause weight gain. So if we are maybe eating the same and we're a little less active and sleeping a bit more, we may experience a weight gain. This is a natural thing that happens. So there are different categories of sleep according to Charaka Samhita. There's sleep during the day, there's sleep during the night, and the quality of time affects the quality of sleep. This is a very important concept. And one of the things that we talk about when we learn Jyotish, or the science of luminaries, and how the movements of different planets is a way of indicating the subtle quality of time, is that time does indeed have quality. And the quality of time can affect us in ways that we may not even be conscious of, but they can change our balance, they can affect our dosha, they can affect the influence of the three gunas of sattva guna, rajoguna, and tamogun. We may just suddenly be feeling like everything sets us off and makes us angry, and that may be because of the quality of the time. It may be something that we don't really have control over. So also, night sleep is more natural, and day sleep can be caused by exhaustion, tamogun, disease, kapha disturbance, and other causes. So these are some of the different ways, different types of sleep that are described in Charaka Samhita. What are some of the things that can cause sleep? So eating can cause sleep. If we eat a lot, we feel drowsy. There's a natural effect that, we get some blood rushing to the stomach if we eat a lot. But according to Ayurveda, if you eat, that can be a cause. If you have eaten heavily, especially, it may be a cause of sleep. It may make us feel like we want to take a nap. Another cause of sleep can be excessive kapha dosha covering the srotas, or the pathways. So if we have, there can be a kind of a vicious cycle here. So if we suffer from a kapha imbalance and kapha increases because of sleeping, and then what happens as kapha increases, we feel like sleeping more, it can become a vicious cycle. It can be very hard to break out of it. Sleep also can be, excuse me, can also be caused by tiredness of the senses, our working senses as well as our knowledge and acquiring senses. For example, your eyes may just get tired when you've been staring at a computer screen for 12 hours in a row. You sometimes just need to close your eyes and lie down. There's no other way around it. I know, been there. Loss of sleep. So now we're talking about the Sanskrit word used is nidranash, the literally destruction of sleep or loss of sleep. Loss of sleep is harmful to health. It's bad for you. When you don't get your sleep at the right time, it's not good. It is not healthy. So what can it be caused by? It can be caused by a vata disturbance, and it can also be caused by a disturbance in sadhaka pitta. Has anyone had the experience where I just couldn't sleep because I couldn't stop thinking about, oh my God, I got this letter from the IRS and I just cannot stop thinking about it. It's been driving me nuts, and I couldn't sleep last night. It kept me up all night because it was bothering me. This is a disturbance of sadhaka pitta. So sadhaka pitta is that part of our pitta fire that is involved in thought. And if it becomes disturbed, for example, if there's something that's disturbing, that can keep us awake. It can, it means that we're not able to calm our mind so that we can go to sleep. What are some of the results of a sadhaka pitta disturbance? So there can be a loss of sleep. That can lead to a short-term memory loss. We can then have a lack of clarity. It can cause an inability to focus. It may be caused by trauma, lack of sleep, or stress. And if you've read any article or any literature or anything about anxiety disorder and depression, all of these 5 things that I've just described are all red flag indicators of this is an indication of anxiety disorder or depression. Please go see your MD and get on some kind of medication to help with that. So that's according to Ayurveda, this may be a result of the disturbance of sadhaka pitta. It may not necessarily be a chronic condition, and it may not necessarily be required to have some medication to deal with it. So there are ways of treating a sadhaka pitta disturbance by diet, and sometimes by herbs, and sometimes by certain treatments such as Shirodhara. Shirodhara is actually a really great treatment. Shirodhara with oil, it can be an excellent treatment for a disturbance of sadhaka pitta. I've had disturbance of sadhaka pitta, and I've had Shirodhara treatment, and I fall asleep before I'm even done sometimes because it's just so soothing and so relaxing. So, what are the 7 types of sleep? There is the tamobhava, that sleep which is caused by tamas, by tamogun. Shleshma samudbhava, caused by a kapha disturbance. So when there's an excess of kapha, then this can also cause sleep. Sleep that's caused by mental exhaustion. Sleep that's caused by physical exhaustion. I'm sure we've all experienced both of those. There's what's called agantuki nidra, or falling into a coma. We've just become unconscious. And, a coma, of course, this is actually referring to a coma, meaning it's a type of unconsciousness from which you cannot simply be awakened artificially. And then there's Vyadhi Anuvartini, sleep which is caused by disease complication. And then there is finally the natural night sleep, which is got a special term for it, Ratri Swabhav Prabhav. It's that sleep which naturally comes about because it is the nature of night. Night is a time for sleeping. If anyone has ever had to work night shift, I used to work in a call center in India. I was leading a programming team there, and it was very hard. I would leave for work at about 6 p.m. and get home around 4 a.m. and then I could never really sleep that well. Trying to sleep between 4 a.m. and 10 a.m. It's tough. It just does not really work that well. So night is the natural time to sleep, and having to stay up all night is not natural. So there are these three categories, three subcategories. So there's a tamasi nidra, a deep sleep like a coma, and there is swabhaviki nidra, or a natural physiological sleep, and then there is the vaikariki nidra, a disturbed sleep, a sleep that's on and off where I'm tossing and turning and not really completely relaxed, and maybe I'm waking up several times. And sometimes I have to go to the bathroom, or sometimes I have to get a drink of water, but sometimes not. Sometimes I'm just waking up and thinking, oh, what am I going to do to go back to sleep? Or should I even go back to sleep? Or anyway, so what are some of these factors that may disturb or increase sleep? So there is murcha, or fainting. There is tandra, or lethargy, and an increase of vata may lead to loss of sleep, and an increase of kapha may lead to atinidra, or excessive sleep, and lethargy. So lethargy is something like when you, I don't know if you've experienced this, but we all sort of have a natural level of sleep where, if you get that amount of sleep, let's say, in the ideal case, if you were eating just enough that your body could easily digest it, and you ate at a time when you were able to fully digest before going to bed, and you were in normal health, and you had a comfortable, peaceful sleep, and you didn't set the alarm clock because you had to be somewhere at a certain time, and you woke up naturally. That's going to be sort of your natural length of sleep. And it varies. In some people it may be less, and some people it may be more. For me, it's usually around 5.5 to 6.5 hours, and it may vary depending on general health, time of year, diet, and so forth. But we've all had the experience. Sometimes you do something like, let's say that you go to sleep without having eaten more than usual and not fully digested, and then you'll sometimes sleep longer. When you sleep longer than your natural amount of sleep, how do you feel when you wake up? You do not usually feel more rested. You sometimes just feel more sluggish. Like, oh, I slept 10 hours and I feel horrible. I feel like, I feel like going back to bed. I feel so bad. And sometimes there's not anything wrong. It's just that there's, lethargy caused by excessive sleep. An increase of pitta may also cause murcha, or fainting, and it may also lead to a disturbance of sadhaka pitta. And of course, the disturbance of sadhaka pitta is one of the main causes of loss of sleep. What are some of the indications of day sleep? So we've talked about night sleep, and night sleep being natural, and night sleep being the best. But sometimes we want to take a nap during the day. We want to have what's called day sleep. What are the things that can cause it? So when we're exhausted by singing, study, alcohol, sex, elimination therapy, carrying heavy weight, walking long distances, or travel. And we may feel like taking a nap, and that's pretty natural. There can be also causes from a wasting disease, thirst, diarrhea, or if there is loss of sleep at night. And then what happens if you haven't been able to sleep at night, it's recommended to have half the normal length of night sleep during the day, because you're not going to get the same benefit. And if you sleep excessively during the day, it is not considered healthy. What are the counterindications for day sleep? So day sleep is not usually indicated in seasons other than summer. If we're overweight, day sleep is not good. Why? Because excessive sleep is going to lead to increase of kapha. Increase of kapha is going to lead to more sleep. It's a vicious cycle. So if we're trying to help someone to overcome a weight problem and be more active, not sleeping during the day is usually good advice. If someone is addicted to oily food, if they're having too much oily stuff or fried things, then sleeping during the day is not good. If their prakriti is dominated by kapha dosha, then also sleeping during the day is not good. Someone who's suffering from poisoning, not recommended to sleep during the day. There's the sleep may allow the poison to act on the body more, and whereas what's needed in the case of poisoning is to eliminate. And we're not just talking about poison in terms of something like a chemical poisoning, but also poisoning in terms of having, eaten or absorbed something that you really need to eliminate. So day sleep may cause headaches. It can cause interference with digestion. It can cause lethargy, just like sleeping too much at night will cause lethargy. Sleeping during the day may cause lethargy. It may cause drowsiness. It may cause impairment of vision and impairment of memory. So now we're moving on to some of the terms that are used in Ayurveda for mental disorders. So this whole discussion about sleep is really it's really crucial to mental health in Ayurveda. All of this discussion about sleep. So this is, it's very sort of a technical list, and we've sort of gone through this very quickly, but the idea here is to spark some discussion in depth and think about these things. Think about this topic of sleep. So, we talked about 3 things in Ayurveda that are important to health: what we eat, and how much we sleep, and how well we sleep, and not overindulging in sex. And so it's these. So this topic of sleep, we associate Ayurveda with discussions of food quite a lot, but sleep maybe not so much. And sleep is a very important topic. And so we've really tried to sort of open up the box a little bit and get you to think about some of the possible issues with sleep during the day, sleep during night, quality of time and sleep, disturbed sleep, possible causes of disturbance of sleep. So there's very important topics here that we'd like you to start discussing, asking questions about, and we will probably next week come back to this a little bit and come up with some assignments on that. So what are these concepts? We have the concept of mada, moha, and delusion. So mada is intoxication. Intoxication, it may refer to actual intoxicants, like alcohol and other drugs, or having wealth, having beauty, and these are things that can cause forgetfulness or mada, intoxication. So in Ayurveda, very interestingly, such things as having a lot of wealth or being very beautiful, and everyone else saying, "Oh yeah, she's so beautiful. I wish I looked like her or him or whatever." This can actually cause a type of intoxication. What happens? The person starts believing it. You know, the way they say, you know, you don't want to tell kids praise them too much because then they'll start, you know, you want kids to have good self-esteem, but you don't want them to think, like if someone's always calling the daughter princess, you know, she might start believing it, and that might not always be a good thing. I mean, if she goes to school and she expects her teacher to address her as Your Highness, that's going to be a little bit of a problem. So mada is intoxication, and it can arise from a number of sources. Moha means bewilderment. It means that I'm in a dreamlike state. I don't see things clearly. My perceptions are altered. So the term used is moha, and it's specifically referring to this bewildered or dreamlike state. And finally, there's a term called atatvabhinivesha, absorption in a completely false idea. This is somewhat similar to the clinical term psychosis. Nowadays, there are different, you know, there's a lot of different specific terminology that mental health professionals use for psychosis. But it's generally understood to mean that someone is unable to distinguish the truth from fiction. So someone, you know, you might say someone's psychotic if they think, hey, there's a roof here, and if I jump off, I might be able to fly. You know, that would be psychotic. And in Ayurveda, we would say atatvabhinivesha. It's someone who's absorbed in a completely false idea. Hey, I'm Napoleon. No, you will address me as the emperor because my armies are just waiting outside. As soon as I get out of this psych ward, my armies are going to march with me and we are going to conquer Moscow. This is someone who's really, you know, atatvabhinivesha. They are absorbed in a completely false idea. So these are just some, you know, general categories of disorders of mind and intellect. So that is pretty much it. I think that's a lot of the, we've really pretty much covered the whole gamut of topics in Ayurveda and the mind. And then our next week's session is going to be kind of wrap up and review a little bit. So do we have any questions at this point? Again, I know we've gone through sort of a lot of breakdown of some of the stuff from Charaka Samhita has been sort of just, okay, boom, boom, boom. I'm hitting you with all these different things, and we've been going through this sort of list here. The idea is I want you to think about it. I want you to discuss it. I want you to put some questions on the forums. And, you know, let's just try to especially think about this topic of sleep. And you really need to understand the Panchakosha, these 5 layers of awareness. These are concepts that are often used in discussing different concepts in Ayurveda. But I'd say that the takeaway from this section here is let's try to understand the role of sleep and sleep disorders as related to Ayurveda and the mind. So if there are no other questions, then I will say good night and namaste, and thank you for attending once again.